Um, I think the premiers, other than Danielle Smith, were absolute failures over the last month. And I think Doug Ford was, in some ways, the worst. He was the most opportunistic, who thought he would call a snap election to run against Trump, and that sort of fizzled within a couple of days. We've got a clip of him pushing back on Donald Trump's demand that Canada ramp up border security. I want to show that clip of Doug Ford. I just think Doug Ford is hollow, and I just really wish that Rob Ford were still with us. Here's Doug Ford the other day. Take a look.
So we're going to tighten that border up until it squeaks. But it works on both sides of the border, by the way. And I've mentioned this in a couple of newscasts down in the U.S. Yeah, I've been on the PM for a long time about tightening up the border. We are tightening up the border. When President Trump says he needs the border tightened up, we acted immediately. And we're going to continue to act immediately. But let's keep in mind, which I've said to the U.S., and I'll say that, I've said it to the elected officials, it works two ways. We've seen over 25,000 kilos of cocaine, heroin, opioids come across from our southern border into Canada. We've seen illegal guns at 95% of these heinous crimes that are committed, not just in Ottawa, in Toronto, the outlying region, they're all coming from the U.S. So in saying all that, we have to work together. And we have been working together. I met with the DEA. We've met with the Border Patrol. We met with our OPP and RCMP, and everyone's pitching in. That's the way it should work. It's not one-sided here.
Well, isn't he making the case for more border patrols? And yeah, there are a lot of bad things that come up from the U.S. into Canada. Isn't that on us as much as it's on them? I mean, we could take a Trump-like approach and say we demand America seal their northern border, but we've put nothing into our own border. I mean, worse than nothing. We at Roxham Road sent the RCMP there to act as concierges. The Americans didn't mind that because, of course, most of the people leaving America through Roxham Road into Canada were people who were about to be deported or people who were convicted of crimes, and they were more scared of Donald Trump than they were of Justin Trudeau. So, I mean, people think the idea that people will self-deport is absurd and ridiculous. It sort of is, but it happened for almost 10 years under Trudeau because Trudeau positively welcomed illegal crossings into Canada. Well, who do you think wanted to cross illegally? People who had a criminal record, people who were on the run from police, people who were going to be deported, lost a battle. But I agree with Doug Ford in that we need a stronger border. But he's done next to nothing on that. So I think he's sucking and blowing at the same time, but nothing beats the Premier of Quebec, Francois Legault, who, like the others, was calling for a Team Canada approach, namely shut off that Alberta oil to punish Donald Trump. Of course, if Canada had other export markets for our oil, we wouldn't be so reliant on America. I would rather sell our ethical oil to America than to China, of course. But who was it who blocked the pipelines from Alberta to blue water oceans? It was the Liberals of Canada, and it was provincial premiers and provincial governments, including in BC. And Francois Legault was one of the worst. He blocked something called the Energy East Pipeline, which would have taken about 1 million barrels of oil a day from Alberta to New Brunswick, where Canada's largest refinery is, currently being filled with American and OPEC oil. So all this Team Canada, come on, Danielle Smith, stop trying to defend your oil patch and be the sacrifice industry for the rest of us as we fight with Donald Trump. As soon as the tariffs are dropped, listen to Francois Legault say, yeah, that whole Team Canada thing, that's over now. We have gone back to hating Alberta oil. Take a listen.
If during your discussions today, the issues of pipelines came up and whether Quebec would now support either an Energy East or some other kind of pipeline that would take Alberta oil out to markets other than the U.S.
Yeah. Of course, right now, there's no social acceptability for this kind of project right now in Quebec. But, of course, situation, the economy, and what Mr. Trump is doing may change the situation in the future. So if there's a social acceptability, we will be open to these kind of projects. But right now, there's no social acceptability, no.
Okay.
So the phrase I think he is using, social acceptability, has been used in English Canada. It's sometimes called social license, which is, yeah, you might actually have the license, the actual permit. You might have checked all the boxes, done your environmental test, done your impact assessments, done your Indigenous relations. You might have done all that, but you don't have social license. What's a social license? Exactly. It's whatever an objector or a vetoer has to say. Well, you haven't convinced me, and I can get 100 left-wing Antifa rioters on the street to say, even though polls have always shown support for Canadian oil and pipelines, we're going to block it. And by the way, polls aren't the determiner. You don't have to win an opinion poll to open up a restaurant. You just have to get your permit. Who gives people a social license? How do you get a license for a social license? Well, that's the joke of it. It's whatever the politicians or the media says. And so Francois Legault immediately is basically saying, well, Antifa and environmental extremist groups say no, so it's no. Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com.